Hey there, welcome back to Story Slices, where we slice through the best Reddit tales just for you. Let's dive right into the first story. The first one is the Tittle story and it starts like this. My grandfather passed away last year at 89, leaving me his lakefront property that's been in our family for nearly 60 years. This place isn't just any vacation home. It's where I learned to swim, where I caught my first fish, where we had every major family gathering. I can still picture my grandfather standing on the dock at sunrise, coffee in hand, teaching me how to tell what kind of day it would be by looking at the water. The property itself is special. About 2 acres with 80 feet of shoreline, an old boathouse my grandfather built himself in the 70s, and these massive oak trees he planted when he first bought the place. One particularly distinctive oak marks the western property line. My grandfather was incredibly meticulous about everything related to the property. He was a retired civil engineer who had worked for the county for 40 years, so he understood property lines better than most surveyors. I'd been helping maintain the place for years even before inheriting it, replacing boards on the dock, repainting the boathouse, clearing fallen branches after storms. It wasn't just a property to me. It was my connection to him and our family history. Last Friday, I drove up for what I thought would be a peaceful weekend. I'd been swamped at work for weeks and needed some time on the water. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, I immediately noticed something was off. There was noise coming from the shoreline, and as I walked around the side of the house, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. A family of 5 had set up what looked like a full beach day on my dock and the small sandy beach area below it. They had chairs, a large umbrella, a portable speaker blasting music, and coolers. The parents were lounging while their kids splashed in the water. They'd even moved my paddleboard and kayak from their storage spots to make room for their stuff. I stood there for a moment, genuinely confused. Had I somehow driven to the wrong property? But no. This was definitely my grandfather's house. I approached them, trying to stay calm. "Excuse me," I said, raising my voice over their music. "I think there might be some confusion. This is private property." The woman looked up from her magazine, pushing her sunglasses to the top of her head. She had that highlighted bob haircut that seems to be the uniform for a certain type of entitled person. "No confusion at all," she said with absolute confidence. "We bought the property next door last month, and this beach access comes with our property rights." I noticed her kids pause their playing, looking uncomfortable. The oldest, probably around 16, was watching with obvious embarrassment. "I'm sorry, but that's not correct," I explained. "I inherited this property from my grandfather last year. This dock and shoreline have been part of this property since the 60s. She sighed dramatically. "Look, our realtor clearly showed us that our property line extends to that tree over there." She pointed to a young birch about 15 feet past my actual boundary line. "That gives us access to this section of beach. We paid a premium for water access, and this is it." "That's actually not right," I said. "The property line runs through that large oak tree with a carved marker on it. Everything on this side belongs to this property." She rolled her eyes. "Well, our paperwork says differently, and we paid good money for lake access. You must be confused about where the line is." Her husband barely looked up from his phone, just nodding along with whatever she said. I decided to handle this reasonably. "Let me get my property documents, and we can sort this out." I went inside, trying to stay calm. My grandfather had kept an immaculate filing system in his old roll-top desk. I found the property survey, deed, and a folder containing photographs of the boundary markers he'd installed years ago. I also grabbed the large survey map he'd framed and hung in the study. When I returned, the woman was rearranging my dock furniture, pushing my Adirondack chairs to the side to make more room for their stuff. Her husband was now helping their younger kids set up a water trampoline in front of my dock. I showed them the survey map and photos. As you can see, the property line is clearly marked by the oak tree with a metal survey marker. My grandfather was a civil engineer who worked for the county for 40 years. He documented everything meticulously. She barely glanced at the papers. "Those are obviously outdated. Our realtor provided us with the current property lines when we purchased last month. This section is clearly part of our lake access." "May I see your documents?" I asked. She huffed and sent her teenage son to retrieve them from their house next door. While we waited, an elderly man from a few properties down was walking along the shoreline and stopped to chat with me. He'd been a friend of my grandfather's for decades. "Having some trouble?" he asked quietly. I explained the situation briefly. He lowered his voice. "They've been here 3 weekends now, and they've already had disputes with 2 other neighbors about their jet skis and noise levels. The husband apparently works for some big company and they act like they own the whole lake." The teenage son returned with a folder. The woman pulled out a property map that looked somewhat official but had obvious inconsistencies when compared to my survey. The lake shoreline was drawn differently, and someone had extended their property line to include part of my beach. "Look," I said, pointing to the inconsistencies, This map doesn't match the county records. The oak tree has been the boundary marker since 1965. There's even a metal survey spike in it that my grandfather installed. Well, our realtor assured us this beach access was included in our purchase, she said dismissively. And we paid good money for it. Do you know who my husband is? He's the regional director for a major investment firm. We have connections with the local government. Her husband finally spoke up. We're just trying to enjoy our weekend. This is our property according to what we were shown when we bought the place. I understand there's confusion, I said, but this is clearly my property. I need to ask you to pack up your things and move back past the boundary line. The woman stood up, crossing her arms. We're not going anywhere. In fact, you're trespassing on our lake access right now. I'm calling the sheriff if you don't leave us alone. Her teenage son looked mortified. Mom, maybe we should just check with the realtor again. Be quiet, she snapped at him. We paid for lake access and this is it. While we were talking, they continued setting up more of their belongings on my property. The husband started assembling a portable grill right on my dock. I noticed several neighbors watching from their properties now. Please don't set that up on my dock, I said firmly. This isn't your dock, the woman insisted, then pulled out her phone. That's it, I'm calling the sheriff. You're harassing us on our own property. I stayed calm. Go ahead, I have all the documentation here. While we waited for the sheriff, the woman became increasingly bold. She started moving my kayak paddles and life vests from the small storage box on the dock, replacing them with their beach toys. Her husband looked uncomfortable but didn't stop her. You need to leave these things alone, I said firmly. Those belong to me. If they're on our property, they're illegally stored, she replied smugly. About 30 minutes later, which felt like forever, a sheriff's patrol vehicle pulled up. The sheriff walked down to the waterfront, looking at both properties as he approached. When he reached us, I recognized him immediately. Sheriff Thompson had been friends with my grandfather for years. They used to fish together occasionally. Afternoon, folks, he said. What seems to be the problem here? The woman immediately launched into her story. We bought the property next door and our lake access extends to here, but this person is trying to claim it's his property and wants us to leave. I calmly explained that I'd inherited my grandfather's property and showed him the survey documents, photographs, and deed. My grandfather was very careful about documenting everything. As you probably remember, Sheriff, he installed permanent boundary markers years ago. The sheriff nodded. I do remember that about your grandfather. Very meticulous man. He examined both sets of documents carefully. Ma'am, may I see your property papers again? He asked the woman. She handed them over confidently. The sheriff studied them, then pulled out his phone and opened what looked like a mapping application. This is the county's GIS mapping system, he explained. It shows official property boundaries. After a few moments of checking, he looked up. Ma'am, according to official county records, your property line does not extend to this beach area or dock. The boundary is indeed at that large oak tree with the survey marker. That can't be right, she insisted. Our realtor specifically told us we had lake access. The sheriff studied her documents more carefully. These papers appear to have been altered. The waterfront line has been redrawn, and this doesn't match our official records. Which realtor did you work with? The husband finally stepped forward, looking concerned. It was someone from that new agency in town. I can't remember the name. Was it that agent who's been advertising lake properties on social media? Asked the elderly neighbor who had stayed to watch the situation unfold. There have been complaints about him misrepresenting waterfront properties. The sheriff nodded. We've had several complaints about a particular agent at that office. I'll need to look into this further. He turned to me. Would you be willing to show me the boundary marker your grandfather installed? I led him to the massive oak tree where my grandfather had embedded a metal survey spike with our family initial decades ago. It was exactly where the survey map showed it should be. The sheriff nodded. This matches the county records exactly. He turned to the family. Folks, I need to inform you that you are currently trespassing on private property. I'll have to ask you to gather your belongings and move back to your own property line. The woman was furious. This is ridiculous. We paid for lake access. You may have lake access, the sheriff explained patiently, but it doesn't include this dock or beach area. Your property does touch the lake further down, but it's a narrower section. He pointed to a small, rocky area about 40 feet away. That's the extent of your lake frontage according to county records. The husband looked devastated, but our realtor walked us down here specifically and told us this was our access point. I suggest you take that up with your realtor and possibly consult an attorney, the sheriff advised. But right now, I need you to remove your belongings from this property. Reluctantly, they began packing up. The teenage son actually helped return my kayak paddles and life vests to their proper storage. He mumbled an apology when his parents weren't looking. As they packed, I overheard the husband saying, "This ruins everything. Where are we supposed to put the dock extension we ordered? I felt a chill. They'd been planning to build onto my dock? The sheriff stayed until they had completely moved off my property. Before leaving, he took me aside. You might want to document everything with photographs and consider sending a formal letter establishing the boundary line. I've seen cases like this escalate if not handled properly. I thanked him for his help and spent the rest of the afternoon setting up security cameras overlooking the dock and beach area, just in case. I also took dozens of photographs of the boundary markers and property line. The next morning, I noticed my elderly neighbor from down the shore talking to another longtime resident while pointing toward the neighboring property. I walked over to chat with them. "Morning," the elderly neighbor greeted me. "Just filling in our friend here about yesterday's excitement." The other neighbor, a retired attorney who'd had a place on the lake for decades, shook his head. "Not surprised. That realtor has pulled similar stunts with at least 2 other properties around the lake. Tells buyers they're getting prime shoreline when they're actually getting minimal water access." "That's terrible," I said. "Those people clearly thought they were buying something else." "Don't feel too sorry for them," the attorney advised. "I overheard them at the marina last week, bragging about how they were going to build a massive dock and boathouse that would finally bring some class to this rustic little lake. They specifically mentioned extending over what they called the unused shoreline next door because it had the deeper water they needed for their boat." "That's my property they were talking about," I realized. Exactly. They knew what they were doing, or at least suspected their claim might not be legitimate. They were just banking on no one challenging them. That afternoon, I started researching riparian rights and waterfront property laws. I discovered that any dock extensions would have required permits that would never have been approved if they encroached on my water rights. I compiled all this information, along with my photographs and documents, and filed additional paperwork with the county to further secure my property boundaries. The next weekend, I invited several neighbors over for a small lakeside gathering. The entitled family next door watched from their property as we enjoyed the beach and dock they'd tried to claim. Their realtor was conspicuously present, apparently trying to explain the property line situation to them. The elderly neighbor joined us, bringing homemade cookies and stories about my grandfather. "Your grandfather dealt with something similar back in the 80s, he told me. Some developer tried to claim part of his shoreline for a condo project. Your grandfather showed up with 40 years of survey records and shut it down immediately." Later that week, I received a certified letter from the couple's attorney, requesting clarification on water access rights. I forwarded it to a lawyer friend who specialized in property law. He replied that their case had no merit and drafted a formal response establishing the boundary lines once and for all. About a month later, I heard from another neighbor that the realtor who had sold the property next door was under investigation by the Real Estate Commission for multiple complaints about misrepresenting property boundaries. Apparently, the documentation I'd provided to the sheriff had been part of the evidence that finally triggered a formal investigation. The entitled family still lives next door, but they've been notably quiet. They built a small floating dock off their actual water access point, which is far less impressive than what they'd planned to build using my shoreline. The teenage son sometimes waves when he sees me. I always wave back. He seems like a decent kid despite his parents. Last weekend, while cleaning out my grandfather's workshop to finally start the restoration project I'd been planning, I found an old journal of his. In it, he'd written about various projects around the property, including setting those boundary markers back in 1965. One entry caught my eye. "Installed permanent boundary markers today. Some may call it excessive, but clear boundaries make good neighbors. This lake will be here long after I'm gone, and I want my family to enjoy it without dispute." The truth, when properly documented, always prevails. I couldn't help but smile. Even years after his passing, my grandfather was still looking out for me. His foresight and meticulous record-keeping had protected our family's special place from those who felt entitled to take what wasn't theirs. I can't imagine a better legacy than that. The next one is entitled People Story. So, I, 30 female, have been happily married for a few years now. My husband, 31 male, is honestly a gem, kind, patient, hilarious, loyal. Basically everything you'd want. Which, after having an ex cheat on me with his best friend, is kind of a big deal. That relationship wrecked me for a while, but I worked hard not to drag the wreckage into something new. And my husband? And thankfully, my husband's never given me a single reason to question him. Until now? Maybe? I do not know. My husband and I have a great relationship, and we're pretty social and often hang out with each other's friends. I get along with almost all of his group, and they've honestly made me feel welcome, except for her, his childhood best friend. Let's call her Claire. Claire has always been cold to me. Not outright rude, just subtle enough to make me feel crazy for noticing. You know that kind of vibe? Every time we've been in the same room, she's managed to talk around me, not to me. I tried. I really did. I've smiled, made conversation, been nothing but warm, even when she's given me nothing to work with. She doesn't show up to group hangouts, but she'll invite him over, and he always tells me, to his credit, he never goes without mentioning it, and he's never weird or secretive about her, but it still rubs me the wrong way. I've tried being friendly. I've tried small talk. Hell, I invited her to our birthdays, barbecues, engagement dinner. She bailed on all. She skipped our wedding too, and she only ever seems to reach out to him, usually when she's just been dumped and needs to talk. When I've brought it up, my husband says I'm overthinking it, that Claire is just a little odd socially. Maybe she is. Then, a few weeks ago, out of nowhere, she messaged me. She asked if I'd model for her project. Totally unexpected, and I was caught off guard enough to say yes. Part of me thought, maybe this is her trying to connect. Maybe this was her olive branch. I even felt a little hopeful. God, I was naive. So I agreed. My husband offered to come with me since he hadn't seen her in a while and thought it'd be fun to catch up after. When we got there, her family was also involved, and from the second I walked in, it was like stepping into some passive-aggressive Twilight Zone. Her mom and sister kept calling my husband our son-in-law. I laugh, awkwardly, think I must have misheard. It only got worse. During the shoot, came more of the snarky comments. Jokes about the one that got away and some bonds never fade. Her mom, at one point, literally said, "We always thought Claire would end up with him. But life has its detours, I guess. Claire always imagined walking down the aisle with him." And then, "It's sweet of her to fill in though." Oh come on, I wish I was exaggerating. And Claire? Just kept snapping pictures, smiling, saying nothing. No hey, cut it out, no awkward laugh, no redirect, nothing. My husband? Clearly uncomfortable. I watched him fidget through the whole thing, clear his throat a few times. He tried to change the subject or came nearby me during the shooting. He didn't say much either, just went kind of quiet. I stuck it out for an hour, let her take her photos, smiled, posed, whatever, but the whole time I felt like I was part of a social experiment, and everyone else was in on the joke but me. When we got in the car, he was silent for a while, then finally said, "Sorry about all. That was weird, right?" And honestly, I didn't even know what to say. Because yeah, it was weird. It was borderline disrespectful. And the fact that he was there, saw all of it, clearly felt it too, and still didn't step in or pull the plug? It makes me feel kind of alone in this. I'm just tired. Tired of pretending this woman is harmless or just awkward. She knows exactly what she's doing. Two, don't want to start a huge fight. But I'm at the point where I don't want her in our lives. Not as a friend. Not as a ghost in the corner of our marriage. No more bending over backwards to be the cool wife. I'm not interested in earning points with someone who clearly doesn't want me around. Anyway, thanks for letting me scream into the void for a minute. I really needed to get this out. Update: a quick recap for those who missed the original. My husband's childhood best friend, Claire, has never liked me. She skipped all invitations but invites my husband alone, avoids me in person, and still found little ways to insert herself into his life. The final straw? She asked me to model for her final photography project. I showed up thinking maybe it was a fresh start. Nope. Instead, I got publicly mocked by her family, who joked out loud that she should have been the one marrying my husband. First off, holy crap! I did not expect that post to blow up like it did. Thank you to everyone who commented, messaged, or just made me feel like I wasn't losing my mind. So many of you asked for an update, and here it is. For those wondering. No, they never dated. He had a high school crush on her over a decade ago. That's ancient history. No, I don't think he's ever cheated, emotionally or physically. He's always very open and honest. We have each other's passwords. They barely see each other anymore in person, maybe once every few months. We live about 2 hours away. Okay, so here's the update. Funny enough, I didn't even get the chance to sit down and talk to my husband before something else happened. I just can't believe my life at the moment. Anyway, I was still trying to process what happened and sort through my anger towards Claire, and honestly, toward my husband too. That's when I got a message from my sister-in-law. We'll call her Madeline. I'm really close with Madeline. She's also part of the wider social circle that Claire floats around in. They're friendly but not close. She sent me a screen recording from Claire's close friend story with a simple, "WTF?" It was a clip of me posing during the shoot, no music, but in the background, you can clearly hear Claire's sister say, "Claire should have been the one to marry him." I lost it. I waited until my husband got home from work, sat him down, and showed him the video. He watched it once, then again. His whole face changed. He finally looked pissed. I could not help but think, why didn't he have the same reaction there? So I laid it all out. I told him everything. Every snide comment, every time Claire made me feel small. How I'd always tried to be civil. How I never asked him to choose between us. But I was done being polite while someone consistently disrespected me. I told him, if this doesn't bother you enough to act, we've got a bigger problem. I'm not going to be in a marriage where I have to beg to be defended. I need a partner who stands up for me. And if that's not you, then I need to rethink this. He didn't argue, didn't get defensive, and I know he feels sorry. Then I showed him the Reddit post. He tried to read every comment. Some of them made him tear up. When he finished, he looked at me and said that he feels like the worst husband. He let this happen right in front of him. He is so sorry. And asked me, what do you need from me now? I told him straight up, this isn't just about her anymore. It's about whether or not you're willing to protect this marriage. But I'm not going to feel like I'm second place in my own relationship. So it's either me or her. So we called Claire. She picked up all cheerful, acting like nothing had happened. We brought up the video. She immediately got defensive. Oh come on, it was just a joke. Are you really mad over that? Seriously? And that's when he stepped in. This isn't just about the video. It's the constant disrespect toward my wife. I didn't say anything before because I didn't want to lose your friendship. And I convinced myself you didn't mean it. But what happened at that shoot? That was disgusting. My wife came to support you, and you and your family treated her like a joke. I didn't speak up then and I'm ashamed of that. But that ends now. I don't even know why I held on to this friendship for so long. If you can't respect my wife, you don't respect me. She laughed. Literally laughed. Wow, you're really cutting me off over that girl? OMG, I was ready to fight. But husband calmed me down. Said to Claire, if choosing between you and my wife ever felt like a hard decision, I wouldn't deserve her. We're not kids anymore. You need to grow up. I simply do not want to be your friend anymore. I have nothing else to say. Telling you he can be a gem sometimes, but yeah, we blocked her and her entire family. Since then, he's been checking in with me, not trying to fix things. Just showing up, listening, understanding. He finally sees what I've been dealing with. We've still got some healing to do, but now I know where he stands. And that changes everything for me. The next one is entitled People Story. I am writing this to figure out what to do or who to believe in this situation. Let me start out by saying that I am white and my lovely fiancée is a black woman. We have an amazing relationship and I don't want any other woman in my life. She is also the only black woman I have ever dated. My parents have always been supportive of me and I have an incredibly strong family relationship with them and my siblings, or at least I thought. When I was growing up in the Midwest, there weren't really black people around and the topic of racism never came up really. But I never suspected that my lovely outgoing and polite parents would be racist because they even donated money to an orphanage in Africa for like 20 years now through their church. My parents met my fiancée a year ago, but did not take it too seriously because I had a lot of girlfriends in the past and they probably just thought it was another girlfriend. Well, last weekend I announced to them that my girlfriend was now my fiancée on a family Zoom meeting. My parents looked a little surprised, because I did not discuss it with them before, but were ultimately congratulating me. We wanted to have a dinner with them in person to sort of let them get to know their future daughter-in-law and everything blew up. My mom forgot something for the dinner and my dad and I went to the store to get it. My fiancée texted me about 10 minutes in asking me to come back right away because she needed me and my dad and I turned around. When I got back she was sitting in my car, I still had the keys, and she was crying asking me to take her to our house. Of course I drove her home and told my parents I was sorry and my fiancée told me what my mom had said to her. Essentially my fiancée told me that my mom said she was not supportive of us because she didn't want black grandchildren. A number of other things that she was surprised my fiancé married up, even though I think my fiancé is better looking than me, but I am a bit more successful financially. Well, I confronted my mom and asked what she said and my mom said that she said nothing even close to that and that the only thing she said was that she was curious what country my wife was ethnically from and that my fiancé mistook it. Well, I asked my fiancé more probing questions, but she is adamant that my mom explicitly said these things. I've never known either of them to be liars, but the two people I trust most in this world are giving me completely conflicting stories. I want to side with my wife, but what if she is having some mental episode or something? Is it a possibility that no one is lying here? I need some ducking help. Update: thank you for those of you who reached out with good suggestions and such. I really took everyone's advice on this. However, I really didn't think it was fair the way I was characterized in the comments, because I love my fiancée and I believe her. But I also loved my mom and had no reason to doubt her either. It's really hard to doubt your parents when they have always been good to you your entire life until this incident. Anyways, I was basically completely wrong about this whole situation. I decided to call my sisters. I told them it was an emergency and we hopped on Zoom together. Well, I explained the crazy story to them and one of them just let out a laugh but tried to hold it back. Then I went quiet and we had a few seconds of awkwardness until she let out, "Are you really asking this?" Then she told me of course mom is racist. And my sisters agreed with her. Then they led me on a 30-minute rant about how mom would tell them not to marry outside their race, especially black people, because these marriages won't work out and no decent man would want you after. Apparently she told them this regularly and they all married white people anyways. The thing is that I am 9 years younger than the youngest of them. so I guess I was never included in these talks. She never once mentioned to me about race and who I should or shouldn't date. I don't know why I never received these messages. Moreover, I guess I'm just blind because they also told me I was the favorite child because I was the only boy. I assumed my parents paid for everyone's first car in college, but I guess it was just me. They were really mad at me for what I put fiancé through and not realizing things. But I feel like that's unfair because how am I supposed to know they were mistreated compared to me if I was just a child when they were in college? I guess the close relationship I thought I had was just an illusion. I told my fiancé that I was with her until I die and I don't care if they all cut me off and that I am siding with her always. I should have done this from the beginning because she is really not the kind of person to call people racist and I never knew her to be super political. After talking with my sisters I hung up almost crying, which I normally don't do. But I went and told my fiancé everything I had learned and we just held each other for a while. She is not really mad at me, but just sad about the whole situation, and we talked a lot about whether to cut my parents out completely or not. I know for sure we will not let them around our future children. Also, my sisters called me back and told me they are sorry they were so harsh to me, but I really hope I don't lose all my family from this. I also found out my dad has those internal Ring cameras, and I asked to see the videos from that day but he told me they were already deleted or overwritten. But I would really like to see it in person for closure. Overall, I'm sorry for the storm this caused on here, but I decided to update just because I keep seeing alerts and messages from people. Maybe somebody will find this helpful. The next one is entitled People Story. So this is literally so dumb, but I have been up all night dreading going to dinner with my family because of what has become a pretty prescient annoyance. So growing up, my family did egg hunts for me and my cousin. However, my cousin's mom and my aunt would always show up drunk and run around and point out all my eggs before I could find them. Never her daughters, just mine. It happened every year and as a kid I obviously didn't know she was drunk. I just thought she was really mean. I would end up sobbing every Easter and eventually started not wanting to even go cause I'd get upset and cry and she'd make fun of me cause you know I was a child. One year my mom said enough with the egg hunts cause my aunt was always drunk, and for some reason to this day my aunt thinks I'm the one who told my mom she was drunk? Like it wasn't obvious? Again, I wasn't even old enough to understand what drunk was. Now every single Easter she makes a big fuss about how I told everyone she got drunk every Easter and ruined the egg hunts and makes a huge deal about it. It's just so annoying. I don't give a crap about egg hunts anymore. I'm 20 years old but she won't shut up. I just want something to say back. I keep telling her off in my head and can't get it to sound right. Please give me some comebacks. I don't care if they are mean. I truly don't give a crap anymore. Update. So I didn't expect my post to get nearly that much attention. I really appreciate everyone who took the time to comment and give advice. I read almost everything but couldn't get to everyone. Before I get into what happened I thought I'd go over some questions from some comments that I saw. Yes, I could not go but I don't really think it's fair for me to miss out on family activities because one person sucks, plus my father passed away a few years ago and my mom doesn't like attending alone. She has done so much for me, the least I can do is be there for her so she's not alone and no one is going to stop me from doing that. Plus I like the ham. My family has tried to stick up for her, my parents included. She makes a big stink about it and plays the victim. Plus my mom just doesn't have the energy anymore to deal with it anymore. I'm also an adult, it's time I deal with her myself. Now to the update. She didn't say anything about the egg hunt this year. But, for good reason, because my other aunt found the post. Because of my lack of sleep I didn't show up to dinner until right before it was time to eat. Apparently my aunt, not the whole one, listens to the show and joined the subreddit and found my post this morning. Before I showed up my family all had a not so fun conversation with her about being the way she is. She didn't see any issues in anything she had been saying or doing, so my other aunt pulled out the comments. They read almost every one of them until she shut up. I of course didn't know about any of it and came ready with a plastic Easter egg filled with fireball to give her when she said something. Or I was gonna hit her with a "oh yeah, it's Easter, shouldn't you be bullying children somewhere," but my time didn't come. She did try to make a comment about how supposedly I tried to take my cousin's Easter basket home one year when I was a kid, but before I got the chance to react my family jumped into action. They immediately started correcting her, saying that was actually her kid that did that and why does she always have to be so idiot. Then she left and went home and my other aunt filled me in on what happened. My family also apologized for letting it go on so long, saying they didn't know it was that bad. I know this isn't what everyone was expecting, but I hope you enjoy it regardless. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow at Story Slices.